love this angle, child. It's the twist out for me. This isn't even its final form. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing a book I recently read. It's called A Kind of Freedom by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. But before I get started, comment below and let me know your favorite book or author. So without further ado, let's get into it. So A Kind of Freedom is a captivating multi-generational story starting with the family of a Creole woman and a Senegalese freedman in the 1940s. So they have 3 children. The story follows their oldest daughter, Evelyn, who essentially marries down despite being the daughter of a doctor. The story goes on to follow Evelyn's youngest daughter of 2, Jackie, in the 80s, and then Jackie's son, TC, in 2010. So through aspects of race, class, and colorism, the story captures the disenfranchisement of a black family, despite the efforts made from the earliest generation of free people. So pretty much Josephine and, what's the daddy name? Josephine and Nelson are a very upwardly mobile family, especially considering that Josephine is a Creole woman, so her being a very light complexion gives her a lot of social status, especially among black people. Probably not as much with white people. Like I'm sure being Creole you're considered black, but being of a lighter complexion, even back then, black people put you on a pedestal. And Nelson, he comes from a family with a bit of legacy because he's a direct descendant of a Senegalese family, and their lineage was able to come over here not long before slavery was over, keep their culture and roots intact, get educated, and make a lot of money. So like that has a lot of economic and social status as well. And so that was really like the biggest takeaway for me, having a realistic story of what's happened to black families throughout the centuries, while white people have had the privilege of just simply not being excluded from economic upward mobility based on their race. It also goes to show that playing the white supremacist game is not going to save black people, at least not in the collective. Like there may be individuals who succeed and make it out, but when you look at the broad picture, people are severely impoverished. Very early in the book, we see Nelson, Evelyn's father, struggle with wanting to let his daughter marry a man from the poorest side of town, and he eventually concedes. But the way the book goes on, it kind of gives you the impression that if Evelyn had married differently, her children may have had better lives. But the reality, in my opinion, is that people should have access to basic things like education and income without having to struggle for it. So trying to fit into standards of white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist patriarchy, shout out to Bell Hooks, is how we make the mistake of blaming individuals or nuclear families for their circumstances when there's a system designed to disenfranchise the most vulnerable people in society. And so what really confused me about the whole thing with Nelson, Evelyn's father, and then in Jackie's story, because in Jackie's story we see what Evelyn and her husband look like and what their lives turned out to be. But it's like, if Nelson was gonna concede to his daughter marrying a poor man, why not? Because if you're so much about making sure that your daughter only goes upwardly mobile, help the man who she's getting with. Like, they had the means to, I think they did give them a house in the book, but I feel like they could have done more for him. You know, he went off to the military, came back, I guess he went to school, maybe tried to go to school, but never was able to finish. I feel like they had the resources to help him, especially like if that's y'all oldest, I think she was the oldest, that's y'all oldest child's, I don't know, they had the means to help him and they didn't, and I just didn't understand that. Like, why not? If you have the means to help somebody, help them. That's just bottom line. Period. So another thing that stood out to me was the topic of dealing with addiction, and more specifically about what an individual's addiction does to their loved ones. Jackie's sister Sybil is like hypercritical of her and her husband Terry, who becomes addicted to crack. I think Margaret does a great job of shedding light on how that pain manifested in Jackie's life and subsequently her son TC. And we see that more in his chapters of the book, where he, you know, is describing how he experienced his mother, because we see how Jackie experiences life from her lens, but it's very interesting to see how TC experienced her through his eyes. So like, she was the type, when she was doing well, she would like clean up, had the, you know, made the best food in town, dressed very well, came to his basketball games, was the type of mom who like all his friends were like, oh, I want to talk to your mom, she's so fine. Like, that was the type of mother he had. But then on the flip side, she would like let dishes pile for months. So, you know, we see that she went through these deeply depressive episodes as a result of having to deal with TC's father's addiction. So I just thought that was interesting. Like, I think that stories about, I don't know, I just really enjoyed the story. I just think it was a really good depiction of like how a lot of families devolved, especially like the impact of like the crack epidemic. Like, I think that was a really good depiction of how people fall into that. Like her husband Terry was a businessman and he still fell into that shit. Like, it could happen to anybody. But anyway, before I go over my time, so overall I definitely recommend the book. I think I gave it like 4 stars on Goodreads, only because I didn't care for the ending personally. It just didn't do it for me, but I liked the characters and the storyline, and I'm definitely going to check out more of Margaret Wilkerson Sexton's work. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.